he had this image as a teen idol. We knew the other side of David. They didn't necessarily.
This was at a time when he was demanding more artistic control.
That was a big issue. That was, not only getting away from the teen idol issue, doing it in a way that wouldn't offend his teen fans. He was so under control with the TV show, and he was so under control with the records, especially the Partridge Family records, in terms of this is what you're going to sing. There's that famous story of the argument over, or doesn't somebody want to be wanted? The talking bit. Yes. That he really argued that he didn't want to do. So yeah, that was all wrapped into more artistic freedom, playing smaller venues, letting David Cassidy be David Cassidy. And I never bought into the sense that, well, his fans, don't want him to be anything other than Keith Partridge. I think they knew who David was. I knew the distinction that they drew between Keith Partridge, who was, kind of a lame character, and David. And I think it was really David they fell in love with, and the voice. If you watch the Partridge Family, the musical numbers, I think, especially in the last seasons, are where David really shines and comes through. And they knew that that was David and that wasn't Keith. They fell in love with David, not Keith Partridge.
As an example over here, we didn't get the Partridge Family until September 1971. Well, by that time, all our teenage magazines were full of pictures of David. And because we didn't have the television series, we only related him to himself. We didn't have a character to put a badge on him and go, this is Keith Partridge. It was always David Cassidy.
And the music, some of those, Buzz Farrell and Jerry Goffin and Paul Anka and Tony Romeo were just wonderful songwriters for that genre. It was certainly, I think, above anything the Osmonds were doing, or some of the other, manufactured groups like the Archies, or some of the other what they were calling bubblegum music at the time. I think this had more of a sophistication. Some of the numbers more than others.
We were saying earlier on about him needing, or in the view of yourself and your fellow students and the other fan clubs you were referring to, that David should have had a more mature audience. It bothered a lot of fans over in the States that he wasn't playing smaller venues. And you had some thoughts on that, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it became obscene. I think that, again, ever since the Beatles played Shea Stadium in New York and were playing stadiums, and then, they did 2 tours like that, and then they gave it up because it was just crazy. There was no creative satisfaction out of playing a stadium like that. You couldn't hear yourself think, no less make music. But I think it was kind of a badge of superstardom that you were going to be able to fill, Wembley, Manchester, White City, going to Japan, going to Australia, filling these stadiums. And of course, the stadiums in the UK, unlike, say, Shea Stadium or the baseball stadiums in the States, where you're very far away from the stage, you have an assigned seat. You're not anywhere near the stage. At these football stadiums in the UK, all these girls were going to be, tens of thousands were going to be pushing up front to get close. And I think by the last, he had done it in 73, but I think by the last tour, I think there was a sense that this might be his last tour. I think the crush, the pandemonium, just was something that maybe they didn't expect. I have no answer for why that happened. We were certainly aware of it. I mean, you can't become any clearer than saying, don't go, and you're telling this huge superstar about to embark on his most successful tour, don't go.
You actually said that to him, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, that was the gist of the conversation. And in fact, the fan group that I was working with at the time were some older folks. They called themselves the David Cassidy Individuality Movement. And of course, the literary magazine where I ran his interview was called The Individualist. So there was this sense of David being able to break out and have his own identity, and that he was an individual, not just part of this machine. But that came with the, being part of the machine came with part of the territory. He signed contracts, he, did the show, and then you